Welcome to the Clause YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Strategic Frontlines, where we are here with another brilliant podcast with an equally brilliant panel. I would like to begin with introducing our panelists for today. We have with us Mr. Manoj Kewalramani, an expert on Chinese politics, foreign policy, and approaches to new technologies. He is currently the chairperson of the Indo-Pacific Research Program and a China Studies Fellow at the Takshashila Institution. We welcome you, sir. We also have with us Ms. Antara Ghoshal Singh, a fellow at the Strategic Studies Program at ORF, who focuses on Sino-India relations, the India-China-US triangle, and Chinese diplomatic politics, which are extremely relevant today. Finally, we also have with us Clause's own Dr. Tara Kartha, who was earlier at the National Security Council Secretariat for 17 years. As a seasoned expert on Pakistan, terrorism, and other security related issues in the neighborhood, she is now Director, Research and Academics at Clause. We welcome all of you and thank you so much for being here. Let's get to the meat of the matter. Let's get to why we are here today. So, recently, there have been rather startling developments that have come out of Pakistan, with major international actors being involved in the country. We know that very recently, a US aircraft landed at Noor Khan base, a base that was destroyed in Operation Sindhu just a couple of months back. We also have a Clause podcast on that same topic just a couple of days ago. So I would urge the viewers to see that one as well. We know that multiple developments have happened with US Pakistan relations. We know of the lunches. We keep talking about the lunches that Asim Munir has had. We talk about the inflammatory statements that have come out from American soil in that same time. We know of multiple high level meetings that have happened between the two countries, as well as the oil deals that have come out of those interactions. At the same time, we now know how China is quote unquote taking a step back from CPEC when the news came that they are not going to be involved in some way or form with the ML1 project, which has led Pakistan to direct its attention towards the Asian Development Bank or the ADB. We know that reports have come in recently of a bilateral and multilateral consortium that has been finalized between the two countries that involves China, Pakistan, ADB, and another bank. All of this is followed by the recent SCO summit that happened, and we see that within Pakistan, domestically, there was a lot of hype that was created. And finally, the comments that and the statements that came out of Pakistan is the formal launch of CPEC 2.0. Here is when I would like to bring in Mr. Kewalramani. In your opinion, what is the 2.0 of this CPEC 2.0? What do we see of what are the actual on ground hard commitments that China has towards this project, and how do we see that right now?
Thank you so much for having me, Akashika. Look, I think if you think of CPEC, this 2.0 phase is a phase of recalibration from the Chinese side in particular. If you think of CPEC 1.0, it was essentially large amounts of Chinese money going in, predominantly in the form of loans, targeted at specific infrastructure investments, right? So energy was the biggest beneficiary, energy investments, and roadways, railways, transport, and of course, Gwadar as a port and the airport there and the connectivity area over there. So those were your sort of big areas and sectors in which money was going in. And what we know so far by estimates is that there was a commitment of anticipated commitment of about $60 to $62 billion that the Chinese were talking about. But essentially what has materialized is just shy of $30 billion, around $27 to $30 billion. And a lot of that has to do with what money can go into Pakistan in terms of how Pakistan can absorb that money and also how Pakistan can utilize that money. Also, over a period of time, you've seen caution from Chinese lenders and investors and businesses dealing with Pakistan. So that was your CPEC 1.0, which still continues. A lot of these projects are not complete. You talked about ML1. There's a lot of work need to be done on the Karakoram highway. There are other sort of connectivity projects which still remain incomplete. There has been lots of challenges with regard to energy projects and payment of dues with regard to energy projects, which has been a friction point between China and Pakistan. So now, as part of this process, Pakistan's capacity to absorb and then to deliver, plus the caution over a period of time amongst Chinese lenders because of the political challenges or failures of BRI has led to a rethinking of, well, what does CPEC mean going forward? And this rethinking has sort of, if you take it back, it's around the Imran Khan government's time in Pakistan where this sort of change starts to happen, where the idea is that can we think of something which is more targeted at people, which does not raise debt, which does not become so cumbersome for Pakistan also? And it suited both parties. So then you had the birth of this idea of gradually CPEC 2.0. What is CPEC 2.0? It's basically saying that, look, instead of moving ahead with these new massive infrastructure investments, we look at industrial parks cooperation and we look at other areas like agriculture, livelihood, and these domains, and we'll try and diversify. So just to sort of briefly tell you what we can see is happening right now, there was a action plan for building a shared community for future between China and Pakistan, which was announced during Shehbaz Sharif's recent visit to Tianjin and Beijing. And if you see from that plan, the BRI, the CPEC component of that plan, begins with industrial cooperation. So the idea of special economic zones in Pakistan, making sure that you have Chinese investments and Chinese businesses operating in those special economic zones. And that can be sort of bilateral cooperation. It also moves into agriculture cooperation, animal husbandry, epidemic prevention, all those sorts of issues where you can sort of work on the farm sector together. It moves to then maritime dialogue and maritime cooperation. A lot of that is related to oil and gas reserves and trying to look at marine resources and can we do joint exploitation of that. There's also a critical minerals component of that, which is emphasized in this plan. And I think the important bit of that is that it comes at the heels of the US looking at critical minerals and natural resources in Pakistan. And in fact, the big infrastructure areas such as the ML1 railways, Karakoram Highway, all comes much later and is de-emphasized. Another big component of this CPEC 2.0 that people see will likely be the idea of investing in Pakistan's digital infrastructure, which China has done for quite some time now. It's not new, but the idea of can we focus on new technologies, can we focus on not just Pakistani broadband capacity, but also artificial intelligence, 5G, cloud computing, big data, can we focus on these sorts of domains? So that's the shift that's happening, which is away from large-scale investment, and which is in the form of lending, towards smaller, more potentially impactful projects for the broader economy, which have multiplier effects, which also don't put as much burden on Chinese lenders, but which also don't exhaust Pakistan's capacity to be able to repay. So that's the shift that's taking place.
Manoj, I was just wondering. See, in this, there is also a reference to in the CPEC 2 document about not allowing others to spoil their relationship, and the terrible, the international relations is so bad and things. So there is obviously some kind of a reaction to the US presence. So I'm just going out on a limb here and wondering whether the CPEC 2, which was delayed for now over 5 years, right? It has been delayed. Whether the interest, there are some other aspects of the CPEC 2 which is very interesting, which has been prompted by US presence. For example, there is one thing, say, talking of land border, cooperation in land borders. There is another one talking of getting into, getting the business in, and of course the oil and gas aspect, which for years apparently China never bothered about Pakistan's oil and gas, and suddenly is terribly interested in that as well as, like you said, critical minerals. So my question too, I'd like to bring Antara in here as to how is this all being, how is it being viewed? Is it viewed through the US lens? How is it in that case? How is it going to likely to pan out?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me today. Before I start my, the presentation part of it or the main view part of it, let me just give a brief background to my work to all the viewers who might not be familiar with my work. So, as a China scholar, I generally look at China's internal discourse by scanning Chinese media, Chinese think tank publications, and other scholarly work. And through that, I tend to ascertain the broad public sentiment in China, the national mood, which has some kind of a bearing on Chinese policies towards various countries, including India. So now back to the topic. I have already written about this almost a month or so back about how U.S.-China competition over Pakistan has been heating up. So Operation Sindoor actually brought to reality, which is often dreaded in India, that is China-Pakistan collusion, battlefield collusion. So while studying the Chinese literature to understand the depth, the breadth, and the prospect of this collusion between China and Pakistan, I could sense a new trend, rather a counter trend emerging in China-Pakistan relations, and that is the US factor. So it was not just India, but also China who was carefully following the Pakistani Field Marshal Munir's visit to the US and having a private lunch with President Trump. Pakistan's nominating President Trump also caused a lot of outrage within China, and the sentiment was that how could Pakistani military, who were flying in Chinese fighter jets, were giving all the credit to the Americans. This sort of thing you can very clearly see in Chinese internet. And also the US calling Pakistan its partner or ally, that has been causing a lot of heartburn in Beijing. So it is true, and I have also written about this, that China has actually despised Pakistan, which is internationally isolated, which is very heavily dependent on China, and it has appreciated Pakistan having stable, relations with, say, other parties like the US, with India, with the Gulf countries. But the condition has always been that China has to be the ultimate beneficiary of Pakistan's external engagements. For example, now that Pakistan is re engaging with the United States, China has been lobbying very hard that, Pakistan doesn't sacrifice on Chinese interest. Say, for example, in the oil deal, China is lobbying that Pakistan puts a condition in the agreement that all relevant equipment must be passing through Chinese invested infrastructure, and that the issue of technology transfer or transfer of core technology is handled in a way that is suitable or that is favorable to China, and that all the oil, whatever oil will be extracted, will flow into the Chinese market, and the economic benefits that Pakistan will be getting from this oil deal with the United States, it flows back into the cooperative projects between China and Pakistan. So the Chinese condition is that if this model is followed, then China will respond with understanding and respect for Pakistan's choice of interacting or engaging with other parties. But what is quite visible is that there are certain aspects of the current round of US-Pakistan re-engagement that is bothering the Chinese side. And if you look at the Chinese interest, you can see the growing mistrust or anger towards Pakistan. And there are allegations galore, actually. There are so many allegations. There are some reports which claim that, Pakistan is signing secret deals with the American companies and keeping Chinese companies away for like 10 years or something like that. Like it is at the cost of Chinese companies. The deals that are being signed are coming in the cost of Chinese companies. Then there are reports about how Pakistan is using the functioning of the Gwadar port as a bargaining chip in negotiation with China, and it is threatening China that you keep investing in Pakistan, otherwise we are going to, transfer the functioning of the port to some other party, mostly the United States. Other reports claim that Pakistan has agreed to, allowing the US to have a base near the Gwadar port. And similarly, there have been a lot of criticism about Pakistan's approach to military cooperation. Some reports claim that Pakistan has leaked J-17 technology, JF-17's technology to Turkey and Azerbaijan. And the Chinese side has been particularly skeptical that Pakistan might do similar things with the US as well in exchange for some short-term profits. So the Chinese overall assessment is that Pakistan is a resource-rich country, but in a very economically dire situation, and the US is seizing the opportunity to weaken Pakistan-China relations, and it is trying to disrupt China's vital energy and trade route, thereby affecting China's energy import security and even raw material supply. Many has also been, upset with Pakistan, and they are claiming that Pakistan knows that China's dependence on Pakistan is quite a lot. Pakistan is important to China to balance India, to reach out to Central Asia, to Middle East. So all these things make Pakistan a critical asset for China, and China do not have many good options, and that is why Pakistan has been very cleverly using the US card to extract more from the Chinese side. China has not directly expressed dissatisfaction on Pakistan, but internally, if you see, there has been a lot of writing about some cost to be imposed on Pakistan. Otherwise, other countries, like, there should be some cost to countries who are deviating from China, because it could be like now it is Pakistan, the next could be Laos or Serbia or Thailand or other smaller countries. So there is definitely an interest in teaching Pakistan some lessons. So this is a new trend that I could see in Chinese discussions these days.
Antara, where you're talking of, this is mainly in, say, Chinese, well, I don't know what is official and what is unofficial, but in chats and in Chinese media, right? I mean, this
Yes,
reference
in
to US.
Yes, in Chinese media, in social media, in Chinese, both private and official media. So official media is not very harsh on Pakistan, of course. But then, if you look at the social media, if you look at the private media, you can see many articles on these lines. And those who follow Chinese internal discourse, they would know that they have, there are certain public accounts which would have some pseudonames, but they would be close to the
Yes,
official stance.
yes.
That they are actually officials, but they will have their pseudonym, and they will, write under those pen names. So that kind of articles also you can find. So there is a lot of buzz in the Chinese internet circle on US Pakistan ties and how it is reshaping China's ties with Pakistan.
If Akashika, I'll just come in on the Pakistan angle here. So we've seen Pakistan playing this game before, right? They've been adept at doing this China versus so and so. The the Pakistan media has made some very interesting observations. One is that they say that the cornerstones of US policy has changed, and India has not realized it, which they may be right. I don't know, but that's one argument. Second, they're saying is that Pakistan has a lot more to offer. Now we're talking about the US, in terms of what it can offer to the US. It can offer Afghanistan, it can offer Iran, it can also offer a possible route to China. I mean, that old Kissinger theories come back. I don't think that is a workable thing, because at that point of time you had the Soviet Union. So it was a different, set of actors altogether. So I don't think that's going to work this time around, on the basis of the fact that I think yesterday, I think Rubio or someone has said that, oh, we'd love to be friends with China, but there are clear limits to that. I'd like to ask Manoj this question. See, the Chinese have been pressing Pakistan for greater interest in intelligence. and in security. And they've been pressing very hard over the last few years, saying, I don't know whether this was leading to those great police stations, what they call, or not, but they clearly at various times have had an upper hand in intel than the Pakistanis. So this the US gambit gives them a little bit of leeway in that area as well. Do you think that is also an issue where they can now push back against the Chinese demand for greater ingress inside Pakistan?
So it's an interesting question. My view is that look, Pakistan. I keep thinking of Pakistan. This is my framework for thinking about how Pakistan engages with others. Is that it is fundamentally a client state, which I mean Munir said, right? It's a dump truck, So it's fundamentally a client state which is looking for multiple patrons, and it has at least three patrons that we know of, which is China, the US, and Saudi Arabia. And it's quite a promiscuous client, right? So it will constantly try and play one of the other as much as it can. To the extent to which US policy has shifted so fundamentally, I mean, it appears, yes, that there is a significant change that's taking place, but I don't know if that change is a done deal. On one day, Trump seems like he wants the US to retreat to being a Western Hemisphere hegemon, having very little security stake in other places apart from economic stake in other places, and wants to cede to a spheres of influence type of world where great powers take care of each other's economic interests, while whatever they do politically in their peripheries is none of each other's concerns. On another day, you see Trump wanting to reshape the Middle East, wanting to build a Riviera and Gaza or whatnot. So I'm not sure if and on the third day you see strategic competition between the US and China still playing out. You see Trump still sort of not pulling out of NATO, still ensuring that NATO remains, cutting deals. The trade deals with his partners in Europe and Japan include an economic security component also, which are targeted at China. So I'm not sure that the shift in US policy is a done deal, but there is certainly a shift. And a shift now, is that shift to a strategic end or to a tactical end of trying to achieve a trade deal with some of the other countries like China? I'm not certain. Where does Pakistan fit into that? Well, there is a movement, right? If there is a shift in US strategic thinking, which in some ways seems to be deprioritizing India from a strategic perspective, in terms of the idea that India would be a bulwark against dealing with a rising China, Trump seems to be suggesting I will deal with China bilaterally, right? You just had a call between the Chinese Minister of Defense and Pete Hegseth, and Pete Hegseth did not use the phrase Indo-Pacific. He said Asia Pacific. So there is some sort of shift that's taking place in US policy. Now, Pakistan is leveraging that opportunity, right? And they're leveraging the fact that this Trump is, fairly narcissistic, who's interested in a Nobel Prize. So they're doing whatever they can. Whether that will mean substantial US engagement in terms of, presence in Pakistan, investments in Pakistan, I am very, very skeptical. I think that ship has sailed by and large, because you don't see that change happening so far. If that were to happen, yes, the Chinese would have a certain amount of anxiety. But as long as the Chinese feel, in terms of US presence, that yes, the Pakistanis will play off different patrons, but the Chinese know that they have the dominant hand in the country. They've been now deeply invested, not just in Pakistan's defense, but also in Pakistan's economy now for the better part of a decade and a half. So they feel that they are quite deeply entrenched. My sense is the Pakistanis will continue to push back against deeper Chinese security presence, but we are already seeing special treatment being given to Chinese businesses. For Chinese businesses, there are special treatments at airports, business people. For Chinese businesses, there are special treatments in terms of security convoys that they travel with. So this will continue to creep forward. My sense is China will eventually get some sort of policing security presence, substantive policing security presence in Pakistan. They are already the lead when it comes to any terrorist attack which targets the Chinese. The Chinese are the ones who are actually lead investigating those attacks in Pakistan. So my sense is they will continue to creep that gain despite whatever this current sort of honeymoon that's going on between Trump and Munir. To me, that is going to be short-lived.
Thank you so much. This is such a brilliant conversation because this is reminding me of an earlier one that I had with Dr. Kartha in the office today, and she rather eloquently said that Pakistan is back at its old game, and this feels like a tug of war between the two countries, that is U.S. and China, and how the old competition is back. And Ms. Antara brought it out really beautifully about how what the Chinese perspectives is to this entire situation. But Dr. Kartha, here again, something similar to what we were talking about earlier. What is Washington's narrative here? What are US motives with ever increasing engagement with Pakistan in South Asia right now? How do you see that?
Okay, so all the if we look at, like Manoj was saying, if you look at the documents regarding US Pakistan financial terms, there's nothing. There's just that 395 billion technical package which they gave, which was preordained. It's something which in fact is good for us. The second thing is the critical minerals initiative, which is also in the millions, in low millions, but signed with the army run Frontier Works organization. You've got the Trump's what is the firm which is owned by his family, which was invited in for cryptocurrency with the Pakistan army chief there to welcome it and bring the delegation down. So they are not engaging at all with the PMO. It's like Shahbaz Sharif doesn't exist. So it's a very, very army to these central command. Central command has got a very large role here. So I'm not. I'm a little uneasy about the direction this is going because seems to be very, very security oriented. So let's see how that works. Oh, yeah,
This will all be cut out.
sorry. So yeah, just to go ahead with this, I wanted to ask Antara. When the Chinese foreign
Is it
Afghanistan,
just me? Lose her?
Uh, Ma'am, sorry, I couldn't hear you.
can you hear me now? What about now? Can you hear? No.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So the trilateral, which the Afghanistan, Pakistan, China trilateral, which took place recently, with the foreign minister went from here to Kabul. If you look at those documents, it seems like China is telling Pakistan and Afghanistan and India, you should all sort of sit together and be very regional and, you'll be very peaceful. So here is China trying to play the peacemaker while the US is trying to separate all of us. That's how it comes across. There's this whole mature decision about how we will bring everyone, and we are the big brother. I found that a very unusual statement, the way they put it. And in the end, of course, they talk of CPEC, Afghanistan being brought into it. And so, how do you see that playing out?
Okay, just to give you a background, I see three strategies are being discussed, in Chinese strategic circles about how to deal with the present situation. So one view is that China must completely suspend all types of aids to Pakistan, including military, economic, and other forms of support, so that it can independently deal with whichever country it wants to engage. However, this move, of course, is going to prove very costly for China because it will completely, change its equation in South Asia, and this is probably the least popular, alternative that is available for the Chinese side. The second strategy that they're discussing is about a viable strategy, that is to moderately restart bilateral cooperation with Pakistan while strengthening constraints along the way. That is, forcing Pakistan to safeguard Chinese interests, including, as you just mentioned, China assuming total control of the security management and operation of Chinese investments within Pakistan, somehow, overruling the debate that is there on Pakistan's sovereignty. So that is the other option that is being considered. And the third option is to diversify. That is to shift the strategic focus and resources away from Pakistan to other actors, including Iran, Afghanistan, other countries in Central Asia, while observing how Pakistan balances its ties with the United States, Turkey, and other forces. So these are basically the three strategies that are being discussed. But there is a consensus within China that something has to be done, and there is a need to move away from this emotional, sweeter than honey and higher than mountain approach to a more pragmatic approach based on China's national strength and national interest. So the thing that you just mentioned about Afghanistan and Iran and all, so that is a part of the third strategy where they are trying to diversify and take a wait and see attitude towards Pakistan, as in how the Pakistan US relations develop from here. And of course they are taking actions accordingly. I think Manoj also mentioned about how they have suspended the construction of the Karakoram highway there, and all the 23 phase 2 projects have been postponed. There are reports about China postponing Pakistan's request for immediate financial assistance, emergency financial assistance of some, I think, 6 billion. I'll just check the figure. I'm forgetting. But there has been a postponement there as well. In the military technology field also, there is a lot of caution that China is taking. For example, the J-35 fighter jet deal that is there, it is happening, but with a lot of caution. The Chinese media reports that all the jets that have been delivered, they are equipped with specially designed chips with self-destruct function, geofencing, and all sorts of surveillance measures. So these are basically the cautious attitude that has set in the Chinese strategic circle vis-a-vis Pakistan. um, uh, and also very interesting is that there are talks about re-looking at the importance of Gwadar, because since last 10 years since CPEC has been launched, there have been but the Chinese stance has always been that Gwadar is at the center of Chinese strategic layout. It is the it is the it is the cornerstone of Chinese Belt and Road strategy. But that position is being rediscussed within Chinese strategic circles. So that is again one big change that I could see. But it is quite certain that China might not be taking very harsh decision or very extreme decision against Pakistan, at least publicly. But they're increasingly feeling that their key interests are being threatened in Pakistan, and in a way they're trying to readjust their cooperation strategy and focusing more on pragmatic ways of engaging Pakistan. So that is one change that I could see. And it's true that Pakistan in history, in if you go back in history, they have very deftly managed their ties with both China and the United States, and have managed to benefit from both. However, with the great power competition that is there, and with so much of insecurity, rivalry, mistrust taking place in this triangle, I think there is a possibility that Pakistan might end up losing the trust of both sides. So that is something I really think that we should watch out closely and see how we can leverage it in our interest. So I think that answers your question, right?
Excellently answered, Antara. Thank you so much.
Can I
I think I
can I
have
just
just, yeah,
can I
yeah,
just
sure.
so this I was at a conversation recently on China in April had its peripheral work conference, which is a conference around its neighborhood policy. And it was an interesting readout from that conference. And if you and I was at a conversation recently discussing what the outcomes of that thing were, and there was an interesting framework that came out of that conversation. I mean, I would have to attribute it to the person who articulated it, but it was a closed door conversation. So the framework that this person presented was that, firstly, historically, China's approach to its neighborhood, its periphery, has been one of, you deal with the US to ensure that your periphery is secure. So if your relationship with the US is secure, you don't face necessarily that much threat in your neighborhood because your primary threat is the US. And that dictum seems to have been turned upside down, because now the approach is you pacify your periphery in order to deal with the US. So you ensure security and you ensure stability in your periphery to your liking. And through that measurement, then you can deal with the US much more confidently. So that means you will see much more activism in our region also. And that's why if you look at Wang Yi's remarks at the press conference in Pakistan, where he talked about South Asia as a whole, standing in Pakistan, he talked about China-India relations and said that these have had ups and downs, but they still have a stable trajectory and all of that. The other aspect that came out from that conversation, which I think is important to highlight, is that you can think of China's goals in its neighborhood as threefold. One is to ensure neutrality of parties in terms of the China-US competition. So the parties that you want to behave neutral. Then there are parties with whom you want to achieve deference. So they must defer to Chinese interests. And then the third set of parties are the parties where China wants to achieve overwhelming dominance. So now if you bucket countries into these three categories, you will see that, I mean, it would love to achieve overwhelming dominance with all, but it's not practical. If you think of Laos and Cambodia, you can argue that China has achieved overwhelming dominance. If you think of, Pakistan, you can see that there is a tussle between achieving deference and achieving dominance, right? Right now, the goal seems to be achieving deference, and the Pakistani strategy has been to extract as much as possible without conceding overwhelming dominance. So for that, Pakistan needs to engage with US, Saudi, and anybody else to keep other partners alive. With India, the approach is neutrality. That if India can remain as far as possible neutral in the China-US competition, then that's probably, objective achieved. So if you think from this lens and you look at China's engagement with Pakistan, to achieve deference to Chinese goals, there will be aspects of inducement because you need to cultivate the client, but there will always be aspects of punishment, because only when you punish can you achieve a certain degree of deference, or only when you wield that stick can you achieve deference. Even one would argue that for neutrality, you need to wield the stick, but you need to be very careful in wielding the stick, because if a state is powerful enough that all you can think of achieving is neutrality, if you beat it too much, you might turn it against you. So I think if you just think of these frameworks and then think of China's engagement with other countries in the neighborhood and its policies in those neighborhoods, you can probably see what it's trying to achieve with each country, and what are then the instruments, like Antara mentioned, right? Whether it is whether it is the limitations of security partnership, whether it is denial of lending at certain times, you can see which aspect is dominant in terms of what they're trying to achieve. I just thought that the framework would be useful for people to think about when they categorize things.
Yeah, that's an extremely interesting one. I hadn't thought of it quite like that. Akashika, I think you had a question.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Dr. Kartha. I was just wondering, because this is taking me back to, we studied something way back when in 12th grade, something known as bandwagon strategy when it comes to dealing with the US. It's making me think of all of my NCRT books right now, and I'm so really glad because I get to do it in front of like such a stellar panel. But more to the point, I was just wondering, and I might be going out on a limb here, thinking we recently know that delegation, like the Iranian president met with the Chinese person just about maybe 4-5 days back, 2nd September, if I'm not wrong. And the readout, if we look at the readout, they say that China and Iran have a profound traditional friendship. quote unquote. So I was just wondering, like Ms. Antara said, that option number 3 of strategic geopolitical outreach that China might be following as of right now, which is to diversify their, interests and diversify their engagements in the region. Is that something that we can expect in the future if the Pakistan US angle and if the Pakistan US friendship or combination, or whatever term we were to give it, do we see China and Iran coming even closer together? This is open to the panel, but we can begin with Ms. Antra.
I can just add to that. The fact also is that the readout between the Rubio and I think Foreign Minister Dar, Pakistan Foreign Minister, that readout dealt exclusively with Iran. I mean, it was basic. So if we are seeing, we also know that Pakistan has often used its territory, given territory of it for the US to use. So in that context, Akashika's question, if Iran sees the US actively in Pakistan against its interests, how does this play out? How will China work this?
Yes. About diversifying, about importance of Iran, I remember that when the U.S. Israel was they were bombing Iran. China was in a very embarrassing situation because of Pakistan, because Pakistan's role was very confusing in that. It was talking to President Trump, nominating him for a Nobel Peace Prize, and the next day you see the US bombing Iran. And the eggs were all on China's face, because China has put Iran, or China's stance is that Iran is an ally, and Iran is there in both SCO and in BRICS. And the argument was that if double membership in China-led organizations can't safeguard Iran, then why would other people, or why would other countries in the global South have trust on China? So it was very, very embarrassing for China, the Iran case. And yes, it will complicate the entire thing if Pakistan takes a very clear stance on siding with the United States against Iran. Again, it will complicate Pakistan's own security situation as well, with Afghanistan having problems with Afghanistan, having problems with Iran, having problem with India, and of course relationship with China suffering because of Pakistan's re-engagement with the United States. So I think Pakistan would not clearly take a stance like that, but they would like to find a balance somewhere, because you can see that they are engaging under the Chinese leadership. They're engaging with Iran and Afghanistan, but at the same time, they are trying to strike a balance somewhere.
Yeah,
Just
I think
to add one point,
yeah.
the balance is evident in the SCO declaration, right? The SCO declaration, which is also signed by Pakistan, name checks Israel and the United States for violating Iran's sovereignty, carrying out illegal attacks. So the Pakistanis are basically playing both sides, and I think obviously the Chinese know that this is taking place. I think that at a certain point of time they were just happy that the war stopped where it stopped. They didn't see the Iranian regime topple. And their view is essentially that, I mean, if you look at Chinese policy throughout since October 7th, 2023, you see that China has fundamentally tried to cultivate the Arab side. And they've tried to obviously build bridges between, Saudi Arabia and Iran. And their approach has been one of trying to build solidarity within that region at the cost of their relationship with Israel, because they've seen Israel as an outpost of the United States. So I think that is the balance that they have in the region. I think they're cognizant that Pakistan plays both sides. To me, as far as they have visibility into what Pakistan might be doing with the United States, they will be okay with it till they have a certain say in the extent to which what Pakistan can do with the United States. How far? Obviously, Pakistan will play both sides, but the Chinese goal will not be that you can't. I mean, there will be red lines, but there will also be a case of, if we have visibility in terms of what you're doing, we can at least have a say in that, and we can at least try and make sure that the damage of that is limited. But the Chinese can't really coerce the Pakistanis to not do certain things. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. Because one of the things of having invested $30 billion in the country is that it also gives that country, it gives the dumpster truck authority over you to a certain degree also.
Well, yeah, that I was I was just wondering. See, uh, uh, there is like there is. I think I can Akashika can take that question. How far the Pakistan internal situation affects this relationship?
I've been, thank you very much, Dr. Kartha. I've been waiting to ask this question because, like I said, as a budding Pakistan watcher, this is something that will be on a tangent and towards more internal Pakistan. Because this, I had a question about how internal fallacies within Pakistan will affect what we are here broadly talking about today, which is CPEC and CPEC 2.0. We know of multiple issues multiple times over and over again when China has been constantly saying that the internal security situation needs to be improved in order for their own assets and for their own self interests, but for those to be improved so that all of the projects that have been invested and funded so vehemently are protected and can go on, normally. So, just as a question again to the panel, I think Ms. Antara can start now. Ms. Antara can start about how the internal fallacies of Pakistan, the internal security situations, about how China for the first time has had private security companies employed within Pakistan. That's an unprecedented move. With all of these coming in, does that affect and impact CPEC 2.0? If it does, how much, and how does the internal insecurities of Pakistan, disrupt CPEC 2.0?
I think one of the biggest complaints of the Chinese side has been the internal security situation in Pakistan, and that is, I mean, as much as I have read Chinese articles or Chinese journal articles on CPEC, and I have seen everywhere, the security, internal security situation being given very high priority in the Chinese scheme of things. And the biggest complaint has been that Pakistan has not been able to stabilize internally. And now with the new situation, with re-engagement with the United States, now you have seen that. They have declared the Balochistan Liberation Force as a UN recognized terrorist group. So that has actually helped the Chinese side because they have actually, this group was primarily targeting CPEC and Chinese invested projects. So it has been a good thing for the Chinese side, and officially China has welcomed that. But if you look at the internal discourse, they are so deeply suspicious about U.S. presence in Pakistan. And there are all kinds of views how it would be, targeting China, how it would be used in a way that CPEC will suffer. So there is deep suspicions within Chinese strategic circles about what is happening, about the US and Pakistan engagement. So that's what I read, because they, of course, it might go in China's favor, but China doesn't have trust. China thinks that it is being done to target Chinese investments in Pakistan.
Yeah, can I just come in there? I'm just wondering, given that Pakistan keeps shouting about, India supporting the Baloch, forgetting that you have made their lives miserable for the last how many decades? I mean, you literally begging for an insurgency. But does this aspect come out in Chinese discourse that India is getting the Baloch to target the Chinese? Is that, have you seen this anywhere?
Yes. So, what I have seen, ma'am, is that China officially often repeats what Pakistan says, and it officially, or some of their scholars would blame India and the United States, not just India, but the United States as well, for the Balochistan Liberation Army and all. But then, I have written in one of my articles also that they understand that there is a internal problem within Pakistan, and how Baloch people have been treated by the Pakistani state. But the problem that China faces is that, if they directly intervene and they directly negotiate with them, that kind of undermines the Pakistani state's authority. And when they try to, support the Pakistani state to, undermine those, terrorist activities, then that creates a lot of anti-China feeling in these regions. So that is a very that's a dilemma that China faces in dealing with the Balochistan issue.
If I just might quickly come in here, ma'am. Just a question that I had, since we are, of course, talking about Balochistan, and I just in my head want to be able to connect it all back to CPEC 2.0. So this one is probably for Mr. Kewalramani. Sir, um, with the, if like in the readout of the 4-year action plan that you had mentioned earlier, there is also a point that talks about people to people connect, and that is one of the elements that I want to focus here on, since we are talking about Balochistan, and we know that there have been a lot of local grievances that come out of the population of those places because of projects that come up under all of these development schemes and these international projects. Is that something that CPEC 2.0 is seeking to be more cognizant of this time around?
I would highly doubt it. I don't think the Chinese are terribly interested in getting Balochis to come to China, and acquire skills and do lots of things. I don't think that is the approach. China doesn't function that way when it comes to dealing with what it sees as difficult or problematic provinces or groups. And you can look at how China deals with, insurgent groups, what it claims are insurgent groups or difficult ethnic minorities in China. So look, I think it uses blunt instruments. It uses development, yes, but it uses blunt instruments. The sort of soft human touch and all comes much later after the territory has been pacified. It doesn't come first up. So I would not see that this current, under this CPEC 2.0 and even previous sort of people-to-people engagement initiatives have anything to do with, trying to get the Baluchis to feel like they are integrated and feel like they are getting greater opportunities. What they would want to do is create opportunities through Chinese projects within the region, and to say, look, we will try and see if we can create jobs over there within that. There was also a recent document out from the Chinese side which talked about Chinese overseas investments, sort of overseas FDI in across 2024. And what you see is that even in that document, what you will see is that they also talk about how many jobs did Chinese companies create for places where they invested for local people. And you will see that it's not as massive as one would imagine. I think the percentages was like about 55-60% around jobs. I don't remember the exact percentage, but it was not like an overwhelming number of jobs created because of Chinese investment were for the locals, right? So those are areas where, yes, I think Beijing will still try to work on, where you create more opportunities for those countries. But it won't be through this people-to-people connect initiative. That's not, and I don't think the Pakistanis will be happy to see the Baluchis travel overseas. So, so they're not in a position where that will happen. But yes, I think the people-to-people initiative will be more about trying to find talent in specific domains, cultural issues, things like that. But that would be with dominant ethnic groups in Pakistan, not the Baluchis.
Can we just close with this question of this China-Pakistan Land Border Joint Committee, which is in CPEC 2. You see, both of y'all have seen that. I'd like if both of y'all could just come, Manoj, with starting with you. How does this work and what does it mean for us?
So, as far as I recall, the first meeting of this committee will take place sometime next year, if I'm correct. And this is related to Pakistan and Afghanistan, trying to create some sort of a, enhanced border-related management and cooperation between Afghanistan and Pakistan. I think this is, the way I read it, again, details are scanty, but I think that this is going to be largely to try and make sure that the flare-ups that have happened when it comes to the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, you are able to manage those better, and you don't see the kind of flare-ups that we saw a couple of years ago, where there was fighting across the border. But also, and that should not interrupt border trade. So the idea is to try and bring both these sides together, is at the center, to try and manage flow of goods, services, and keep the peace. I don't think this is about border settlement between the two. I think this will be about managing trade and things like that. I don't think the Chinese will want to. Now, will that eventually lead to some sort of political involvement on issues of settlement? Yeah, it's a slippery slope. Once you get down that road, you might. But to my understanding, this is about ensuring that you don't see the kind of disruption and violence that you saw a couple of years ago.
Antara, you want to say something on this?
Not much, just that China wants to play, as you mentioned, during the course of our discussion, that it wants to play the role of mediator or a big brother who is trying to, it is trying to stay relevant in the region. It is trying to, act as the peacemaker in the region. And that is why, it is in a way forcing Pakistan to have a workable relationship with both Iran and Afghanistan. It is and it is very much in sync with China's role, or how China wants to project itself as a peacemaker in various regions, in the Gulf region, in Ukraine and Russia conflict. So that is very much in sync with China's interest in projecting itself as a new peacemaker in the world.
I think, yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. If I can just have one final question, the wrap-up question is: how do you see all this working out for India? This U.S.-Pakistan, tussle which is going on. Manoj, if you could start just a couple of lines.
Yeah, to me, I think this is the confluence of events over the last 8 months since Trump has took power have been detrimental to India's broader interests. I think they remain detrimental to India's broader interests. I think there is a realization that we've had to come to terms with. Firstly, that yes, we need to be multi-aligned. We can't be over-reliant on any one party in this world. Secondly, as while being multi-aligned, we need to invest in Indian domestic capacity across the board. Our economy needs to be growing much more than 6%. We can't afford that. So we need to be able to double down on some of our economic reforms to be able to unleash that potential, which then releases resources for other things also, from security perspective also. And thirdly, I think it's a good thing that we are on a path to set some sort of a new balance with China. I think we need to engage with China. Even dealing with Pakistan requires us to engage with China. So I think that we need to, to me, it's a positive that we are engaging, and engagement does not mean surrender. I think we should be engaging on our terms, and we are engaging on our terms. And I think that is a positive. So yes, net, the environment is far worse than what it was a year ago, the geopolitical environment. The currents are not in our favor, but there are things that we can do. And, one of the things about India historically is that in crisis, we tend to take the difficult steps that we need to take. So hopefully this crisis will spur those difficult steps.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, Antara, please go ahead.
Not much from my side. There's, what I think is like we shouldn't take China Pakistan nexus or China Pakistan collusion just on the face value. Of course, China Pakistan nexus exists, but there are changes happening, and we should carefully look at them. I find it funny how the negotiation is happening. The Pakistanis are saying, China, you're so dependent on us, and you should invest more on us. You should keep us afloat. You should keep the money coming to us. And the Chinese are saying, you are making Gwadar port a bargaining chip, but look at your security situation, internal security situation. Nobody is going to come and invest in you. So there's a tough negotiation happening, and we should all carefully look at it, and try to see, of course, that our interest is maintained, and our interest is there when Pakistan loses, support from both sides. So we should keep our eyes and ears open.
I think by and large, these grays in the Pakistan-China relationship is really not seen outside this discussion, which is why it is so fascinating. People see it as a black and white thing. Akashika, over to you.
I think that's it, ma'am. If it were up to me, this conversation would keep on going for hours and hours. But I really am grateful to our panelists. This is the end of our podcast. I hope we see you soon. And for all of our viewers, I hope you keep coming back to us for more such brilliant topics. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. And it was lovely having you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Akashika. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.